All right, folks, today we're going to read Book 11, The Book of the Dead, or The Land of the Book of the Dead, right? The Land of the Dead, about Odysseus' journey to Hades, to the underworld. If you recall, last time Odysseus left the island of Circe here, she had told him that he needed to go to the Land of the Dead to find Tiresias and get a prophecy from him about how he might journey home. And so he and his crew set out, sailing to the north to the Land of the Dead. They've got to find this area where there's like lava seeping out of the rock, and there's a hole to enter the underworld. And they go in there, and they lead this black ram and black ewe, and they have to dig a trench and kill it and pour the blood out. And like there's a whole series of sacrifices they have to make and things that they do. The story, I think, skips a lot of that as we go through and read it. They just summarize it in this line. Odysseus and his crew set out for the Land of the Dead. They arrive and find the place to which Circe has directed them. So, that's what we're going to pick up. We'll read this, and I'll give you analysis as we go along the way. Remember, we are still in Odysseus' voice. We're not in the storyteller's voice. So I'll put on my Odysseus voice, and we'll do the best we can with this. And then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead. Remember that, Odysseus is talking to King Alcinous of Phaeacia, who has had him dinner and asked him to tell his journeys, and that's the story we're getting right now. I don't want you to forget that somewhere, back in your mind, you should be thinking that there's danger in Ithaca for Odysseus's wife, who may have to marry one of the suitors, and his son Telemachus, who went to find word of him and is sailing back in a ship, and the suitors are going to ambush it and murder him. Like, all of that's still going on. I know it's been a while as we go through the Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops and Circe and now the Land of the Dead, but this is all a story that's being told at a banquet while all that other stuff is still happening. It's just tabled. Anyway, and then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead, vowing to slaughter my best heifer for them before she calved, if at home in Ithaca, and burn the choice bits on the altar fire. As for Tiresias, I swore to sacrifice a black lamb, handsomest of all our flock. Thus, to assuage the nations of the dead, I pledged these rites, then slashed the lamb and ewe, letting their black blood stream into the well pit. Now the souls gathered, stirring out of Erebus, brides and young men, and men growing old in pain, and tender girls whose hearts were new to grief. Many were there, too, torn by brazen lance heads, battle-slain, bearing still their bloody gear. From every side they came and sought the pit, with rustling cries, and I grew sick with fear. But presently I gave command to my officers to flay those sheep the bronze cut down, and make burnt offerings of flesh to the gods below. To sovereign Death, that's Hades. To pale Persephone, this is good allusions, if you're looking for allusions to connect. Meanwhile, I crouched with my drawn sword to keep the surging phantoms from the bloody pit, till I should know the presence of Tiresias. One shade came first, Elpenor of our company, who lay unburied still on the wide earth as we left him, dead in Circe's hall, untouched, unmourned, when the other cares compelled us. Now when I saw him there, I wept for pity and called out to him. Now, if you guys remember, as they were leaving Circe's island, Elpenor fell off the roof and broke his neck and died. And Homer engineered the situation to allow him to give his viewpoints on what happens to people when they die. I mean, we all know that different cultures have different ideas about death, and what happens is one of the great mysteries. Most religions, in part, are there to answer that question: what happens when we die? And so here's Homer's answer. It gives you a good indication of what the ancient Greeks believed. Now, when I saw him there, I wept for pity and called out to him. How is it, Elpenor, that you could journey to the western gloom swifter afoot than I on the black lugger? He came on a ship, and Elpenor came on foot, and he's here first. So apparently, as soon as you die, you're in the Land of the Dead. The travel is very fast. He sighed and answered, Son of great Laertes, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, bad luck shadowed me, and no kindly power, ignoble death. I drank with so much wine, I slept on Circe's roof, then could not see the long steep backward ladder coming down, and fell that height. My neck bone buckled under, snapped, and my spirit found this well of dark. Now hear the grace I pray for, in the name of those back in the world, not here, your wife and father, he who gave you bread in childhood, and your own child, your only son Telemachus, long ago left home. When you make sail, and put these lodgings of dim death behind, you will moor ship, I know, upon Aea Island. There, O my lord, remember me, I pray. Do not abandon me unwept, unburied, to tempt the gods' wrath while you sail for home, but burn my corpse, and all the gear I had, and build a cairn for me above the breakers, an unknown sailor's mark for men to come. Heap up the mound there and implant upon it the oar I pulled in life with my companions. He ceased, and I replied, Unhappy spirit, I promise you the barrow and the burial. So we conversed, and grimly at a distance, with my long sword between, guarding the blood, while the faint image of the lad spoke on. Now came the soul of Anticlea, dead, my mother, daughter of Autolycus, dead now, though living still when I took the ship for holy Troy. Seeing this ghost I grieved, but held her off, though the pang on pang of tears, till I should know the presence of Tiresias. Soon from the dark that prince of thieves came forward, bearing a golden staff, and he addressed me. So this is, I think, an important moment. Odysseus is in the underworld, and he sees the ghost of his dead mother. But his mother was alive when he left Ithaca to go to Troy. And so this is the first time he's known that she's dead, and she wants to talk to him, but he has a mission. And his mission is to talk to Tiresias. And he was told not to let any of the ghosts get near the blood and to hold them back with a sword until he had talked with Tiresias. That, of course, includes the ghost of his mother. So he has to hold off the ghost of his mother with a sword and not talk to her and not interact with her until he's had a chance to talk to Tiresias. And this shows Odysseus, I think, mastering his emotions. You can feel the emotions he's got, the emotions coming off of him, but he has to control them. And this control over emotions, I think, is something that Odysseus is struggling with to some extent, and this shows some progress. He was having trouble with the Cyclops controlling his emotions, certainly. Anyway, Tiresias shows up and comes forward bearing a golden staff, and he addresses him. Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, why leave the blazing sun, O man of woe, to see the cold dead and the joyless region? Stand clear, put your sword, let me but taste of blood, I shall speak true. At this I stepped aside, and in the scabbard let my long sword ring home to the palm of silver, as he bent down to the somber blood. Then spoke the prince of of those with gift of speech. Great captain, a fair wind, and the honey lights of home are all you seek, but anguish lies ahead. The God who thunders on the land prepares it, not to be shaken from your track, implacable. In rancor for the son whose eye you blinded, one narrow strait may take you through his blows, denial of yourself, restraint of shipmates. When you make landfall on Thricinia first, and quit the violent sea, dark on the land, you'll find the grazing herds of Helios, by whom all things are seen. All speech is known. Avoid these kind. Kind is an old word for cows. Hold fast to your intent, and hard seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. But if you raid the bevies, in other words, if you eat the cows, I see destruction for ship and crew. Though you to survive alone, bereft of all companions, lost for years, under strange sail shall you come home, to find your house filled with trouble, insolent men eating your livestock as they court your lady. You shall make those men atone in blood, but after you have dealt out death, in open combat or by stealth, to all the suitors, go overland on foot and take an oar, until one day you come where men have lived with meat unsalted and have never known the sea, nor seen sea-going ships with crimson bows and oars that fledge light hulls for dipping flight. The spot will soon be plain to you, and I can tell you how. Some passer-by will say, what winnowing fan is that upon your shoulder? Halt, and implant your smooth oar in the turf, and make fair sacrifice to the Lord Poseidon. A ram, a bull, a great buck boar. Turn back and carry out pure hecatombs at home to all wide heaven's lords, the undying gods, to each in order. Then a sea-born death soft as this hand of mist will come upon you when you are wearied out with rich old age. Your country folk blessed, peace around you, and all this shall be just as I foretell. Okay, and so this is Tiresias' prophecy, right? So he says, hey, Odysseus, you can get home if you and your men Deny yourselves and don't eat the cattle of the sun god. But we know from the invocation of the muses at the beginning of the story that it's meant to eat the cattle of the sun gods. We know how this is going to turn out. But then, if that's the case, he's going to get home. There's going to be trouble in his house. We know all this is coming true. So there's no question about how this prophecy is going to turn out. The end is interesting. The way that Odysseus gets over his feud with Poseidon is he's got to carry an oar on his shoulder and walk inland away from the sea until he comes to some place where somebody looks at the oar and is like, hey, is that a winnowing fan? In other words, like an instrument that you would use for harvesting grain. Now we use combines, but back then they used these sticks and they would knock the grain loose. And so he's like, is that a winnowing fan? And so when somebody doesn't recognize the oar as an oar, he's far enough away from sea and he's going to make a sacrifice to Poseidon. And making a sacrifice to Poseidon so far inland, it's going to be the farthest inland that ever sacrifice to Poseidon was made. That being the case, it will satisfy Poseidon and he will be able to end his feud and live a long life. And that's sort of what Tiresias' prophecy is. So we know that's what's going to happen to Odysseus. However, that's where this Book of the Dead ends here. It says then, quote, Odysseus speaks to the shade of his mother. She tells him that Penelope and Telemachus are still grieving for him and that his father, Laertes, has moved to the country where he too mourns his son. Odysseus' mother explains that she died from a broken heart. Odysseus also speaks of the spirits of many great ladies and men who died, as well as those who were being punished for their earthly sins. Filled with horror, Odysseus and his crew set sail. That's a fair summary of what happens, but think about all you're missing here. You know I'm not going to do that to you. I mean, Odysseus talks to his dead mom. You can't skip that. Now, by the way, if you haven't noticed this already, when you go and you track the hero's journey, this scene is approaching the inmost cave. This is the darkest moment of Odysseus. He sees that his future is full of difficulty. He learns that his mother is dead and that she died of grief from him being gone. And so he's sort of the cause of death. And he learns that he's not going to get home in any kind of a swift way, and that there's a lot of trouble waiting for him. And all of this is, I mean, after 10 years gone, it's sort of overwhelming to him. And this is that moment of self-doubt. This is that moment of misery that Odysseus faces on his quest. So let's jump over to another translation with all the Greek names, which are going to be hard for me to pronounce. And we'll read and get some of the information you missed. He's going to meet his mom here in just a second, but he's not done talking to Tiresias. When he had done, I said at once, Tiresias, my life runs on then as the gods have spun it. But come, now, tell me this. Make this thing clear. I see my mother's ghost among the dead, sitting in silence near the blood. Not once has she glanced this way toward her son, nor spoken. Tell me, my lord. May she in some way come to know my presence? To this he answered, I shall make it clear in a few words and simply. Any dead man whom you allow to enter where the blood is will speak to you, and speak the truth. But those deprived will grow remote again and fade. When he had prophesied, Tiresias' shade retired, lordly, to the halls of death. But I stood fast until my mother stirred, moving to sip the black blood. Then she knew me, and called out sorrowfully to me, Child, how could you cross alive into this gloom at the world's end? No sight for living eyes, great currents run between, desolate waters, the ocean first, where no man goes, a journey without a ship's timber under him. Say now, is it from Troy, still wandering after years, that you come here with ship and company? Have you not gone at all to Ithaca? Have you not seen your lady in your hall? She put these questions, and I answered her, Mother, I came here, driven to the land of death, in want of prophecy from Tiresias' shade. Nor have I yet coasted Attica's halls, nor touched my own land, but have had hard rowing since I joined Lord Agamemnon's host, by sea for Ilium, the wild horse country, to fight the men of Troy. But come now, tell me this, and tell me clearly. What was the bane that pinned you down in death? Some ravaging long illness, or mild arrows flying down one day from Artemis? Tell me of father. Tell me of the son I left behind me. Have they still my place, my honors, or have other men assumed them? Do they not say that I shall come no more? And tell me of my wife. How runs her thought? Still with her child, still keeping our domains, our bride again to the best of the Greeks? To this my noble mother quickly answered, Still with her child indeed she is, poor of heart, still in your palace hall, Forlorn her nights and days go by, her life is used up in weeping, but no man takes your honored place. Telemachus has care of all your garden plots and fields, and holds the public honor of a magistrate, feasting and being feasted, but your father is country bound, and comes to town no more. He owns no bedding rugs or fleecy mantles, but lies down winter nights among the slaves, rolled in old cloaks for cover near the embers. Or when the heat comes at the end of summer, the fallen leaves all round his vineyard plot heaped into windrows make his lowly bed. He lies now even so, with aching heart, and longs for your return. Well, age comes on him, so I too pined away. So doom befell me. Not that the keen-eyed huntress with her shafts had marked me down and shot to kill me. Not that illness overtook me, no true illness, wasting the body to undo the spirit. Only my loneliness for you, Odysseus, for your kind heart and counsel, gentle Odysseus, took my own life away. Now, Tiresias said they had to speak the truth, and so the spirit has to say exactly what killed her, and it was her grief for her missing son, who is now standing before her, that killed her. You can imagine the effect this has on Odysseus himself. I bit my lip, rising, perplexed, with longing to embrace her, and tried 3 times, putting my arms round her, but she went sifting through my hands, impalpable as shadows are, and wavering like a dream. Now this embittered all the pain I bore, and I cried in the darkness, "Oh, my mother! Will you not stay, be still here in my arms? May we not, in this place of death, as well hold one another, touch with love, and taste salt tears' relief, the twinge of welling tears? Or is this all hallucination, sent against me by the Iron Queen Persephone to make me groan again?" So he tries to hug her 3 times, and all 3 times he goes through her. He can never hug her again. She's dead. And the finality of this death really settles on him, and that it was his fault, he believes. "Oh, my child, alas, most sorely tried of men, great Zeus's daughter Persephone knits no illusion for you. All mortals meet this judgment when they die. No flesh and bone are here, none bound by sinew, since the bright-hearted pyre consumed them down. The white bones, long exanimate to ash, dreamlike, the soul flies, insubstantial. You must crave sunlight soon." Note all things strange seen here, to tell your lady in after days. So in our talk, then the other shadows came, ladies in company sent by Persephone, consorts or daughters of illustrious men crowding about the black blood. I took thought how best to separate and question them, and saw no help for it, but drew once more the long bright edge of broadsword from my hip, that none should sip the blood in company, but one by one, in order, so it fell, that each declared her lineage and name. There were great loveliness of ghosts. I saw before them all that princess of great ladies, Tyro, Salmoneus' daughter, as she told me, and queen of Cretheus, a son of Aeolus. She had gone daft for the river Oedipus. There's a whole bunch of, actually, I don't know that I need to read all of these. There's a whole bunch of women that come and meet with him, and I don't know that there's a lot of them that we recognize from what we did in class with the mythology unit. We have, trying to look and see, Antiope, we know her. She was Antiope. She was the one who married Theseus, I believe. We have Alcmene, who was the mother of Hercules. He meets her. Megara, Creon's daughter. Creon was in the Tale of Oedipus. He shows up. I'm still going down. So we could go through, but all of these are illusions. Leda, who Zeus, tried to get with, and she turned into a cow. So we've got that one too. Let me go down. Let me. Oh, Ariadne. Yep, that's the one with Theseus and the Minotaur. That's right. I guess Antiope was Orpheus. So we're seeing a lot of connections, and it goes on. But then King Alcinous of the Phaeacians is going to interrupt. So we're going to get from the land of the dead. We're going to go back to the dinner party where Odysseus is telling the story, and we have sort of an interruption here. So let me find that, and then we'll go reading from there. So after he talks about the women he sees in the Hall of Death, Odysseus falls silent. And we're back to the voice of the storyteller for a second instead of the voice of Odysseus. Then he fell silent. Down the shadowy hall the enchanted banqueters were still. Only the queen, with ivory pale arms, Arete, spoke, saying to all the silent men, Phaeacians, how does he stand now in your eyes, this captain, the look and bulk of him, the inward poise? He is my guest, but each one shares that honor. Be in no haste to send him on his way, or scant your bounty in his need. Remember how rich, by heaven's will, your possessions are. Then Achilles, the old soldier, eldest of all the Phaeacians, added his word. Friends, here was nothing but our own thought spoken. The mark hit square. Our duties to her majesty for what is to be said and done. We wait upon Alcinous's command. At this the king's voice rang. I so command. As sure it is I who, while I live, rule the sea rovers of Phaeacia. Our friend longs to be put out for home, but let him be content to rest here one more day, until I see all gifts bestowed. And every man will take thought for his launching and his voyage, I most of all, for I am master here. Odysseus the great tactician answered, Alcinous, king and admiration of men, even a year's delay, if you should urge it, in loading gifts and furnishings for sea, I too could wish it. Better far that I return with some largesse of wealth about me. I shall be thought more worthy of love and courtesy by every man who greets me home in Ithaca. The king said, As to that, one word, Odysseus. From all we see, we take you for no swindler, though the dark earth be patient of so many. Scattered everywhere, baiting their traps with lies of old times and places no one knows. So Alcinous is like, yeah, maybe you're Odysseus, maybe you're not. I'm not really worried about it. You really seem legit to me. But there's a lot of people who lie and tell stories and try and get gifts from hosts who are not who they say they are. You speak with art, but your intent is honest. The Greek troubles and your own troubles you told as a poet would, a man who knows the world. But now come, tell me this. Among the dead, did you meet any of your peers, companions, who sailed with you and met their doom at Troy? Here's a long night, an endless night before us, and no time yet for sleep, not in this hall. Recall the past deeds and the strange adventures. I could stay up until the sacred dawn as long as you might wish to tell your story. So this little break in the story shows us that Alcinous is like, hey, Odysseus, I'll give you a ship. I'll send you back to Ithaca, and I'll send you tomorrow. We'll wait until tomorrow so that you can get gifts from everybody who's here listening to you, and you can go back with a little bit of wealth. But in the meantime, we've got the whole night in front of us, and you're a great storyteller. Tell me, in the underworld, did you see any of the guys from Troy? Achilles or Ajax or King Agamemnon, any of the ones you fought beside who have since died. And so Odysseus is now going to go back to his story. We're going to go back into Odysseus' voice, and we're going to go back to the underworld, and we're going to hear a lot of connections. Remember the Troy story that I recorded for you and we watched? Pay attention to that, all those famous names of people. We're going to see a number of them. And then we're going to see some folks that you'll remember from your Greek mythology unit, Tantalus and Sisyphus and Hercules and some of those guys too. So there's a lot of allusions coming at you pretty quick here, and a lot of backstory that connects with the Trojan War, and I'll try and give it to you as best I can. Odysseus, the great tactician, answered, Alcinous, king and admiration of men, there is a time for storytelling. There's also a time for sleep. But even so, if indeed listening be still your pleasure, I must not grudge you my part. Other and sadder tales there are to tell of my companions, of some who came through all the Trojan spears, clangor and groan of war, only to find a brutal death at home and a bad wife behind. After Persephone, icy and pale, dispersed the shades of the women, the soul of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, came before me, somber in the gloom. If you recall, Agamemnon was the king of all the Greeks who led the force to war. He went home and was murdered by his wife and her boyfriend, who she had been cheating on him with, and that's the story we're going to get here. His name was Aegisthus. Came before me, somber in the gloom, and others gathered round, all who were with him, when death and doom struck in Aegisthus' hall, sipping the black blood. The tall shade perceived me, and cried out sharply, breaking into tears. Then tried to stretch his hand toward me, but could not, being bereft of all the reach and power he once felt, in the great torque of his arms. Gazing at him, and stirred, I wept for pity, and I spoke across to him. O son of Atreus, illustrious Lord Marshal, Agamemnon, what was the doom that brought you low in death? Odysseus wouldn't know. He hasn't been home, so he doesn't know what happened to any of these people. So all of these people he left, these are comrades he went to war with. Picture it as a war veteran with his friends, his comrades who he fought with in battle, finding out that they're all dead. Remember, this is the lowest point in Odysseus' journey. He's finding out that all these people that he thought were alive are now dead. What was the doom that brought you low in death? Were you at sea, aboard ship, and Poseidon blew up a wicked squall to send you under, or were you cattle raiding on the mainland, or at a fight of some strong point, or women when the foe hit you in the mortal heart? But he replied at once. Son of Laertes, Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, neither did I go down with some good ship in any gale Poseidon blew, nor die upon the mainland, hurt by foes in battle. It was Aegisthus who designed my death, he and my heartless wife, and killed me after feeding me, like an ox felled at the trough. That was my miserable end. And with me my fellows butchered like so many swine, killed for some troop or feast or wedding banquet in a great landholder's household. In your day you have seen men, and hundreds die in war and bloody press, or downed in a single combat. But these were murders you would catch your breath at. Think of us, fallen, all our throats cut, wine bowl brimming, tables laden on every side, while blood ran smoking over the whole floor. In my extremity, I heard Clytemnestra, that's his wife. Oh, sorry, Cassandra, that's a slave girl that he took. Now, Clytemnestra is his wife. She's the sister of Helen, who the whole war was fought for. But Cassandra is a slave girl, the daughter of King Priam, that Agamemnon took as a war trophy and was bringing back. And of course, he and she had been sleeping together. So it's sort of unfair that his wife Clytemnestra was sleeping with Aegisthus, and like he gets back and she murders him. I mean, like, there's sort of a parody there. It seems cool and okay for Agamemnon, who's a king, to sleep around, but not so for his wife. And this is, underscored. We saw it a little bit with Circe and with Calypso and Odysseus, and now we're seeing the same sort of thing, I think, underscored here. But anyway, I heard Cassandra, Priam's daughter, piteously crying, as the traitress Clytemnestra made to kill her along with me. I heaved up from the ground and got my hands around the blade, but she eluded me, that whore, nor would she close my two eyes as my soul swam to the underworld, or shut my lips. There is no being more fell, more bestial than a wife in such an action. And what an action! That one planned. The murder of her husband and her lord. Great God, I thought my children and my slaves at least would give me welcome. But that woman, plotting a thing so low, defiled herself and all her sex. All women yet to come, even those few who may be virtuous. He paused, and then I answered, foul and dreadful. That was the way that Zeus, who views the wide world, vented his hatred on the sons of Atreus. Intrigues of women, even from the start. Myriads died by Helen's fault, and Clytemnestra plotted against you half the world away. And he had once said, let it be a warning even to you. Indulge a woman never, and never tell her all you know. Some things a man may tell you, some he should cover up. Not that I see a risk for you, Odysseus, of death at your wife's hands. She is too wise, too clear-eyed, sees alternatives too well. Penelope, Icarius' daughter, that young bride whom we left behind, think of it. When we sailed off to war, the baby boy still cradled at her breast. Now he must be a grown man, and a lucky one. By heaven, you'll see him yet, and he'll embrace his father with old-fashioned respect, and rightly. My own lady never let me glut my eyes on my own son, but bled me to death first. One thing I will advise, on second thought. Stow it away and ponder it. Land your ship in secret on your island. Give no warning. The day of faithful wives is gone forever. But tell me, have you any word at all about my son? My son's life? Gone to Osahomenos or sandy Pylos, can he be? Or waiting with Menelaus in the plain of Sparta? Death on earth has not yet taken Orestes. But I could only answer, son of Atreus, why do you ask these questions of me? Neither news of home have I, nor news of him, alive or dead, and empty words are evil. So this is the exchange with Agamemnon. He's looking for his son to take vengeance against his wife who murdered him, and that's, of course, what actually happens. There's actually a story about his daughter called Electra. That was her name. And you can read it. It's a play that was I think there are 3 versions of it that still exist by different authors of ancient Greek times, and you can hear the story of Agamemnon in that, if you wish. But anyway, the advice of Agamemnon that Odysseus is going to take, though, is that he's going to land on Ithaca not in front of his house and not just walk up to the door. He's been warned to be a little more crafty, and that's an important warning that he's going to take, and you'll see that later. So we exchanged our speech in bitterness, weighed down by grief, and tears welled in our eyes, when there appeared the spirit of Achilles, son of Peleus, then Patroclus' shade, and Anticleos, and then Aias, first among the Danaans in strength and bodily beauty, next to Prince Achilles. Now that great runner, grandson Achaeus, recognized me and called across to me. Now, this is a conversation that Odysseus is going to have with Achilles. You all remember Achilles. So first he talks to Agamemnon, the king. Now he's going to talk to Achilles, the greatest warrior who died at Troy. Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, hold knife, what next? What great feat remains for you to put your mind on after this? How did you find your way down to the dark where these dim-witted dead are camped forever after images of used-up men? I answered, Achilles, Peleus' son, strongest of all among the Greeks, I had need of foresight, such as Tiresias alone could give, to help me homeward, bound for the crags of Ithaca. I have not yet coasted the Greek mainland. Achaia is another word for the Greek land, and the Achaeans are the Greeks. I've just been changing them for you so you don't have to worry about multiple meanings. I have not yet coasted Greece, not yet touched my land. My life is all adversity. But was there ever a man more blessed by fortune than you, Achilles? Can there ever be? We ranked you with the immortals in your lifetime. We Greeks did, and here your power is royal among the dead men's shades. Think then, Achilles, you need not be so pained by death. To this he answered swiftly, Let me hear no smooth talk of death from you, Odysseus, light of counsels. Better, I say, to break sod as a farmhand for some poor country man on iron rations than lord it over all the exhausted dead. Tell me, what news of the prince my son? Did he come after me to make name in battle, or could it be he did not? Did you know if rank and honor still belonged to Peleus in the towns of the Myrmidons, or now maybe Helios and Pythia spurn him, seeing old age fetters him, hand and foot? I cannot help him under the sun's rays, cannot be that man I was on Troy's wide seaboard in those days when I made bastion for the Argives and put an army's best men in the dust. Were I but whole again, could I go now to my father's house, 1 hour would do to make my passion and my hands no man could hold hateful to any who shoulder him aside. Now when he paused, I answered, Of all that of Peleus' life, that is, I know nothing. But happily I can tell you the whole story of Neoptolemus, that's his son, as you require. In my own ship I brought him out from Cycros to join the Greeks under arms, and I can tell you, in every council before Troy thereafter, your son spoke first and always to the point. No one but Nestor and I could outdebate him, and when we formed against the Trojan line, he never hung back in the mass, but ranged far forward of his troops. No man could touch him for gallantry. Aye, scores went down before him in hard fights, man to man. I shall not tell all about each, or name them all, the long roster of enemies he put out in the action, taking stock of the charges on the Greeks. But what a champion his lance ran through in Eurypylus, the son of Telephos. Chetons and throngs around that captain also died. All because Priam's gifts had won his mother to send the lad into battle, and I thought Memnon alone in splendor ever outshone him. But one fact more. While our picked Greek crew still rode that hollow horse Epius built, and when the whole thing lay with me to open the trap door of the ambuscade or not, at that point our Greek lords and soldiers wiped their eyes, and their knees began to quake, all but Neoptolemus. I never saw his tan cheek change color, or his hand brush one tear away. Rather he prayed me, hand on his hilt, to sortie, and he gripped his tough spear, bent on havoc for the Trojans. And when he had pierced and sacked Priam's tall city, he loaded his choice plunder and embarked with no scar on him. Not a spear had grazed him, nor a sword's edge in close work. Common wounds one gets in war. Ares, in his mad fits, knows no favorites. But I said no more, for he had gone off striding in the field of Asphodel, the ghost of our great runner Achilles, glorying in what I had told him of his son. Now other souls of mournful dead stood by. I want to stop for a second. We talked about the importance of family. as a theme in this story. Have you noticed the running theme of what all the dead want to know about the living? They all ask about their sons, how their sons are doing, or how their fathers are doing, or how the people they loved are on Earth. And so the overarching theme, the importance of family and family units, I think comes through really strongly in these chapters. We're seeing these comrades of old Odysseus. I have about 5 minutes left to get through the rest of this, so I'm going to do the best I can. But you're seeing a lot of allusions, you're making a lot of connections. This is important stuff. And again, it's important to the development of Odysseus as a character because he's learning lessons from each of them. From Achilles, he's learning that life is better than honor. Achilles was the most honored man in the world, very proud, and Odysseus is like, nobody can say anything bad about you. You must be happy in death. And he's like, God, I would rather be a poor slave living in the dirt than living here under the earth, or dead here under the earth. And I think that strikes home to Odysseus. He internalizes that lesson. So he learns a lesson from each of the people that he comes through this conversation with, and that's important that you pay attention to those lessons and see how they affect Odysseus moving forward. Now other souls of mournful dead stood by, each with troubled questioning, but one remained alone apart, the son of Telamon, Ajax it was, the great shade burning still, because I had won favor on the beachhead in rivalry over Achilles' arms. The lady Thetis, mother of Achilles, laid out for us the dead man's battle gear and Trojan children, with Athena named the Greeks fittest to own them. Would to God I had not borne the palm that day. Remember, there was a contest between Ajax and Odysseus. You may not remember this from the Trojan War thing. And Odysseus ended up winning the contest, and Ajax got so upset that he didn't win Achilles' armor that he went off in a fit of rage and murdered all the cattle of the Greeks. And then, so ashamed of what he had done, he committed suicide. And so here's Odysseus locking eyes with the guy who committed suicide because of him. And I think this exchange is pretty powerful too. Anyway, would to God I had not borne the palm that day, for earth took Ajax then to hold forever, the handsomest in all feats of war, noblest of the Greeks after Achilles. Gently therefore I called across to him, Ajax, dear son of royal Telamon, you would not then forget even in death your fury with me over those accursed calamitous arms. And so they were, a bane sent by the gods upon the Greek host. For when you died, by your own hand we lost a tower formidable in war. All we Greeks mourn you forever, as we do Achilles, and no one bears the blame but Zeus. He fixed that doom for you because he frowned on the whole expedition of our spearmen. My lord, come nearer, listen to our story, conquer your indignation and your pride. But he gave no reply, and turned away, following the other ghosts towards Erebos. Who knows if in that darkness he might still have spoken? I answered, but my heart longed after this to see the dead elsewhere. So, Odysseus tries to make amends with with Ajax, who was so proud and so upset at losing the contest. But Ajax will not even in death make amends with Odysseus, and he turns and walks away. And I think, again, there's a lesson here about pride. Odysseus is a man who has a lot of pride, and he's already taken some struggle out of this pride. Like he is here because he was so proud as to announce his name to Polyphemus, the Cyclops. And so he's learning a lesson from Achilles, too, about how to swallow your pride and make amends. And that's going to be important moving forwards. So we're almost done with this. I'll just keep reading. And now there came before my eyes Minos, the son of Zeus, enthroned, holding a golden staff, dealing out justice among the ghostly pleaders, arrayed about the broad doorways of death. And I glimpsed Orion, huge hunter, gripping his club, studded with bronze, unbreakable. With wild beasts he had overpowered in life, on lonely mountainsides, now brought to bay on fields of asphodel. And I saw Tytos, the son of Gaia, lying abandoned over 9 square rods of plain, vultures hunched above him, left and right, rifling his body, stabbing into the liver, and he could never push them off. This hulk had once committed rape of Zeus's mistress, Leto, in her glory, when she crossed the open grass of Panopus toward Pytho. Then I saw Tantalus, put to torture in a cool pond he stood, lapped round by water, clear to the chin, and being athirst, he burned to slake his dry throat with drink. Though drink he would not ever again. For when the old man put his lips down to the sweet water, it vanished round his feet and gulped underground, and black mud baked there in a wind from hell. Boughs, too, drooped low above him, big with fruit, pear trees, pomegranates, brilliant apples, luscious figs, and olives ripe and dark. But if he stretched his hand for one, the wind under the dark sky tossed the boughs beyond him. Then Sisyphus in torment I beheld, being roused about to a tremendous boulder, leaning with both arms braced and legs driving, he heaved it toward a height, and almost over, but then a power spun him round and sent the cruel boulder bounding again to the plain, whereon the man bent down again to toil, dripping sweat, and dust arose overhead. Next I saw manifest the power of Hercules, a phantom. This, for he himself had gone feasting amid the gods, reclining and soft, with Hebe of the ravishing pale ankles, daughter of Zeus and Hera, shod in gold. But in my vision, all the dead around him cried like affrighted birds, like night itself. He loomed with naked bow and nocked arrow, and glances terrible as continual archery. My hackles rose at the gold sword belt he wore, sweeping across him, gorgeous images of savage beasts, boars, lions, with wildfire eyes, sword fights, battle, slaughter, and sudden death. The smith who had that belt in him, I hope he never made, and never will make another. The eyes of that vast figure rested on me, and of a sudden he said in kindly tones, this is Hercules talking to Odysseus, it's pretty cool, son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, under a cloud you too, destined to grinding labors like my own in the sunny world, son of Cronian Zeus or not, how many days I sweated out, being bound in servitude to a man far worse than I, a rogue, a rough master. He made me hunt this place one time to get the watchdog of the dead. No more perilous task, he thought, could be. But I brought back that beast up from the underworld. Hermes and gray-eyed Athena showed the way. And Hercules, down the vistas of the dead, faded from sight. But I stood fast, awaiting other great souls who perished in times past. I should have met then god-begotten Theseus and Pirithous, whom both I longed to see. But first came shades in thousands, rustling in a pandemonium of whispers, blown together, and the horror took me that Persephone had brought from darker hell, some saurian death's head. I whirled then and made for the ship, shouted to the crewmen to get aboard and cast off the stern hawsers, an order soon obeyed. They took their thwarts, and the ship went leaping toward the stream of the ocean, first under the oars, then with a following wind. And so they leave the halls of the dead. But Odysseus has had all of these encounters, and these encounters help to shape him and change his philosophies and ideologies. I like that last one with Hercules because in some ways it makes Odysseus and the labors that he has getting home akin to Hercules and the labors that he's had. And the two of them share this, even though Odysseus is mortal born and Hercules is a demigod, they share this kinship in this moment. I think that gives strength to Odysseus as he plans his homeward journey. All right, I said I wanted to make all these under 45 minutes. We're at 43, so I'm going to cut this short. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments or send me an email or just ask, and I will do my best to answer. Thank you.